Right now, protests are underway outside a private ICE detention center in New Jersey. And inside, about 300 people are reportedly on a hunger strike over what they say are poor conditions, including rotten food and inadequate medical care. Clashes have erupted between protesters and ICE agents over the past few days. You can see one person here being dragged by their arms across the pavement. There it is. Nope, that's not it. And yesterday, Democratic Senator Andy Kim says he was pepper sprayed. Now, DHS Secretary Markwayne Mullin is calling the protests a, quote, political stunt by New Jersey sanctuary politicians for fundraising clicks and denying reports there even is a hunger strike inside. MS Now's Mark Santia is outside the facility in Newark. I also want to bring in former HUD Secretary and 2020 presidential candidate Julian Castro, and staff writer at The Atlantic, Ashley Parker. Both are MS Now political analysts. So, Mark, what are you hearing on the ground there?
Oh, Chris, we have seen tensions flare up here a short time ago. Take a live look behind me. You can see protesters as well as ICE officers. We did see protesters shoved to the ground by ICE officers. We also saw an ICE officer injured and taken away limping from the scrum. We have not seen any arrests. Tempers have since cooled. About 24 protesters are standing together today outside Delaney Hall, telling MS Now there is no place they would rather be today.
Why is it so important for you to be here?
Because I feel what we are doing in this country is so unjust and inhumane. We are ripping apart families. We're causing tremendous hardship. And we all have a duty to speak up and not be complicit in this very, very cruel system.
There are reports of a hunger strike inside by some detainees against what they allege are inhumane conditions. DHS Secretary Markwayne Mullin saying, quote, there's no hunger strike at Delaney Hall. There are no subprime conditions. Now, a public records review from our investigative unit, Chris, has found ICE's own internal watchdog had previously flagged issues during an inspection here at Delaney Hall last year. The inspectors flagged 12 detention standard issues, including some in food service, and recommended the agency work with the facility to resolve them. We are reaching out to ICE to see what changes were made, what the results were from this inspection last year. Chris?
Thanks so much for that. So Democratic Congressman Rob Menendez was able to actually get inside the facility and just spoke to my colleague Ana Cabrera about who he met. Take a listen.
Every time that we're here, we use it as an opportunity to talk with the individuals who are being held here because it's important to tell their stories. Like an 18-year-old from New Jersey who's missing her high school graduation because she's inside the Delaney Hall. She's missing her brother's 8th birthday this week because she's inside Delaney Hall. Women who are pregnant who are inside Delaney Hall. Women who had just given birth months before they were apprehended by ICE who aren't able to nurse their newborn children because they are inside Delaney Hall.
So he got in, obviously, Mr. Secretary, but this is not the first time or first place we've heard these kinds of stories. Some of them from inside have been harrowing by people who actually witnessed it. Are Democrats powerless to do anything? Is the best that they can do is what we heard from that one protester who said she felt she had to show up?
No, I wouldn't say the Democrats are powerless. I mean, they're doing one thing that's important now, which is shining a light on the abuses, on the failures of this system. This Delaney Hall is a private detention facility that is owned by the GEO Group, of course, a huge corporation that has had many kinds of similar complaints launched against it over the years. The other thing Democrats have done, of course, is in the budget process to refuse to support new funding for ICE until matters like this are addressed sufficiently. So there's a lot that they can do to push back and to continue to shine a light on this. The other part I would just invite viewers to think about here is you have hundreds and hundreds of people in this facility, and these are people who are coming oftentimes from desperate circumstances. They've lived hard lives, lived under threat, lived in violent areas. Some of them have dealt with intense poverty. Many of them just want to get back with their family, and they're worried that if they rock the boat in any way, that basically they're going to get deported. And even then, the circumstances in this place are so bad that 300 of them have chosen to go on a hunger strike and to take this action that I bet they know makes it more likely that they're going to end up separated from their families because they get deported. That shows you, I think, how bad the circumstances are in Delaney Hall.
Actually, we haven't seen the major clashes like we saw in Minnesota, but we know the White House has actively taken steps to carry out immigration efforts more quietly. Can Democrats, and I guess maybe should Democrats, get immigration back in the public eye the way they did back then, or strategically, is their time better spent on the economy? I wonder what you're hearing.
A couple of things. I mean, those clashes in Minnesota and those two Minnesota killings were a negative and understandably so turning point for the Trump administration, where one of his signature issues, immigration and border control, went too far, and the vast majority of Americans agreed it went too far. So it did show that there is a line that this president can cross when it comes to immigration, because early on there was a sort of gleeful sense from the White House that images of, if they could portray them as unruly protesters, going up against ICE and law enforcement, they originally thought that was beneficial to them, and that was not the case. Now, to specifically answer your question, Democrats who I've talked to and Republicans who are worried about this say the most salient issue is, as it ever was, the economy. But immigration is tricky for the Democrats because there is a sense most voters, including Democratic voters, want some sort of border enforcement. That is popular, whether you are a Democrat or a Republican, but they don't necessarily want it to go as far as this administration is going. They don't want horrific conditions inside privately owned ICE facilities. They didn't want, in his first term, families, mothers and children being split apart. But for Democrats to engage on immigration, according to polls, focus groups I've watched, and Democrats I've talked to, they need to be able to hold the line on basic things like law and order and border security, while also offering potentially a more compassionate approach than we're seeing out of this administration.
Secretary, let's go back, if we can, for a minute to access, because New Jersey's Democratic Governor Mikey Sherrill says she was denied access to the facility and wrote this in a statement, quote, "They don't want oversight or accountability. There should be no reason that they wouldn't have people in the prison to show that it is being run well." And it raises the question, if there is nothing wrong, why not let the governor in? Some Republicans would argue is because it's going to be used then for propaganda. But how do you see this? And again, what can be done about it? Who has oversight?
Well, Congress does have oversight, and that's why Senator Kim and members of the congressional delegation from New Jersey, Representative Menendez, were able to go in, even though the governor of New Jersey, Governor Sherrill, was not allowed to go in. And here, really, they're just, they're pulling this federal and state distinction. But I think underneath that, Chris, is the important point that there's a through line here. Under Donald Trump, DHS and ICE specifically have done everything they can to avoid accountability. And Minnesota was a very good example of that. Specifically, right from the beginning, they shut out state and local authorities who were investigating what happened to Renee Nicole Good after she got killed, and what happened to Alex Peretti when he was shot and killed. They didn't want state and local authorities involved in those investigations because they don't want anybody else involved in monitoring what's happening, getting to the truth. Fundamentally, they don't want the accountability that comes with others getting to participate in the process. And in this case, it's the governor of New Jersey. They want her out.
Ashley, 911 calls at these places are on the rise, with more than 1,000 emergency calls made over the last year from at least 6 detention centers around the country. That's according to call logs obtained by NBC News. 28 of those calls reportedly involve serious self-harm. There have been 5 reported deaths by suicide this year. It speaks to what the secretary was saying about the desperation inside. But I wonder, given what you were just talking about, which is there is this kind of push and pull. People want to secure a border. They think one thing went too far. If this is your issue, how do you present it? Or again, is this something that is going to show up in the fall? Is it going to show up in the Latino vote? What are people saying about how they see this now?
Again, in hearing Democrats talk about it, Democrats will privately say it's a complicated issue for them, in part because most Americans do want some form of border security. They do want some form of law enforcement in their cities. But the flip side you hear from voters in focus groups, and again from Democrats, is that Americans are a compassionate people. Nobody wants to hear of people in ICE detention centers who are so desperate that they're engaging in self-harm, that they are successfully committing suicide, that, that an 18-year-old is missing for high school graduation. These are always the stories, rightfully, that tug at heartstrings. And so one of the lessons I've heard Democrats talk about that they learned under President Biden, where there was such a reaction to what Trump was doing on immigration, which Democrats and much of the country found reprehensible, that there was almost an overcorrection of saying, for instance, that period when everyone was talking about abolish ICE. And now, again, there's different Democrats on the margins, but in general, if you talk to Democrats, they say, we are done with the messaging of abolish ICE or no immigration enforcement whatsoever, but we can be compassionate, we can be humane, and we can also enforce the borders and the rules and laws of this country in a way that we are not seeing President Trump and his administration do. So that seems to be the sweet spot for most of them, at least in an ideal world.